Our next guest is in the waiting room, and so we're going to go ahead and bring her in and go to our next reader.
Yay!
Yay!
Are you going to do the bio for her, or you want me to do it?
Do you want to read it?
Sure, but
Okay.
She'll have to help me with her last name.
Yes. Season!
Hey, Season! All right, Season. Say your last name just so I don't, butcher it for you.
Ciechanowski.
Ciechanowski, right? There's like a ch in there.
Yeah, that's Polish.
Okay, very cool. Now, Season is going to read for us. Looks like 2, maybe 3 or more poems. That would be awesome. Now, she and her husband, Thad, they have their own YouTube channel called Poe Movies. And they are it's a passion project that's been driven by her and her husband. She's an ex-teacher who loves Edgar Allan Poe, history, literature, cinema, horror, and corvids. We love corvids too.
Yes.
The project makes entertaining education content for the YouTube channel, and they also make Emmy Award-winning film adaptations of Poe's stories. We have shown a few of them on our podcast and during our interviews, and they've joined us on Poe Unplugged. So we are happy to have Season joining us. And so without further ado, if you are ready, Season, take it away.
Okay. I'm gonna say right now, I'm in the middle of getting my prescription changed. So like I have to make everything really large font. So even though I can read these 100 times, but my eyesight is like, I'm in the middle of getting like contacts and getting things changed.
Understandable. Yes.
So,
yes.
And I mean, I lay read at church too. And man, I had such a funny time last week because I stumbled over a couple words and I had to tell the congregation like, I can't really see it that well. I'm trying.
Oh gosh.
I understand.
Yes.
I told Carmen, I said, today is the first day I've actually put my contacts in months. Yeah. And I don't use glasses because I don't really need them. Yeah. But as old as I'm getting, it seems that, I'm playing the accordion.
Oh, yes. Yes.
So it's okay. We feel your pain and we understand, and you just go with it. We'll be very supportive either way.
And we're gonna we'll turn off our screen and sound, that way nothing interferes. Yes.
Okay, well I'm gonna read 4 poems today.
Yay!
They happen to be 4 of my favorite Poe poems, and you might think that like the normal favorites would be like The Raven, but The Raven I put in a totally different category because I'm like everybody knows about it, and it's like the most perfect poem on the planet in my opinion. So
yeah,
I can't even include that in my top favorites because it's beyond that. It's like it's a given.
Yeah.
But for Poe, there's 4 that I really like, and I like A Dream. I'm going to read today A Dream, For Annie, Spirits of the Dead, and The Valley of Unrest because they happen to be my 4 other favorite Poe poems.
They're awesome choices. When you had sent what you wanted to read, I was like, oh, this will be great.
And not very many people know. I don't think very many people have been exposed to The Valley of Unrest or A Dream. I think you hear a dream within a dream, but you never read A Dream.
No.
So I want to pick ones that maybe people hadn't really read or wouldn't want to read because they aren't familiar with them. So
absolutely. And I think For Annie is a little bit understated as well. I don't think a lot of people know about that one unless you know about Poe's relationships with people and in his life. So
for real. And I thought about it and I'm like, man, I wish I would have thought through this a little bit more because I would have done an intro for each one to give an idea. Because I know Spirits of the Dead went through major edit. That's one of the 4. He edited a lot. Like you can go on the Poe Baltimore Society and you can see all the iterations of it. It's like really
and it's interesting when you do look at the first versions versus the ones that evolved. When we read what was the happiest day?
Yes, we had to go through different
there's a whole stanza missing.
Because one there's 4 stanzas, one there's 5, and we're like, well, which one is which? So but it's turned out it's just edited. And sometimes writers especially, they go through a lot of editing. You should know because you do a lot with your Poe movies and stuff. And so
you're gonna have to make yourself stop at a point because you can honestly endlessly critique and change your work around.
Oh yeah. It never ending. And
it's good to have a second person on hand that can just slap you and say stop. So
That's why it's good to have an editor, a good editor you trust.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
All right. Well, Season, take it away, and we're here and
just say
very
back
excited.
to us when you're ready.
Yes.
All right, I'm ready to go.
Okay.
Let's go.
All right.
Have fun.
Okay. All right. A Dream by Edgar Allan Poe. In visions of the dark night, I have dreamed of joy departed, but a waking dream of life and life hath left me broken-hearted. Ah, what is not a dream by day to him whose eyes are cast on things around him with a ray turned back upon the past? That holy dream, while all the world were chiding, hath cheered me as a lovely beam, a lonely spirit guiding. What though that light through storm and night so trembled from afar? What could there be more purely bright in truth's day star? Next one for Annie. Thank heaven, the crisis, the danger is past, and the lingering illness is over at last, and the fever called living is conquered at last. Sadly, I know I am shorn of my strength, and no muscle I move as I lie at full length, but no matter, I feel I am better at length. And I rest so composedly now in my bed that any beholder might fancy me dead, might start at beholding me, thinking me dead. The moaning and groaning, the sighing and sobbing are quieted now with that horrible throbbing at heart. Ah, that horrible, horrible throbbing. The sickness, the nausea, the pitiless pain have ceased with the fever that maddened my brain, with the fever called living that burned in my brain. And oh, of all tortures, that torture the worst has abated the terrible torture of thirst. The naphthalene river of passion accursed, I have drank of a water that quenches all thirst, of a water that flows with a lullaby sound from a spring but a very few feet underground, from a cavern not very far down underground. And ah, let it never be foolishly said that my room, it is gloomy and narrow, my bed. For a man never slept in a different bed, and to sleep you must slumber in just such a bed. My tantalized spirit here blandly reposes, forgetting or never regretting its roses, its old agitations of myrtles and roses. For now, while so quietly lying, it fancies a holier odor about it, of pansies, a rosemary odor, commingled with pansies, with rue and the beautiful Puritan pansies. And so it lies happily bathing in many a dream of the truth and the beauty of Annie, drowned in a bath of the tresses of Annie. She tenderly kissed me, she fondly caressed, and then I fell gently to sleep on her breast, deeply to sleep from the heaven of her breast. When the light was extinguished, she covered me warm, and she prayed to the angels to keep me from harm, to the queen of the angels to shield me from harm. And I lie so composedly now in my bed, knowing her love, that you fancy me dead, and I rest so contentedly now in my bed with her love at my breast, that you fancy me dead, that you shudder to look at me, thinking me dead. But my heart, it is brighter than all of the many stars in the sky, for it sparkles with Annie. It glows with the light of the love of my Annie, with the thought of the light of the eyes of my Annie. If you ever thought that Poe didn't know how to use the M dash, or that Emily Dickinson was like the master of the M dash, you need to read For Annie, because he just knocks it out of the park with the M dash in that poem. If you're an M dash fan, totally check out For Annie. You will love it.
Totally agree, Season.
Like, Emily Dickinson gets all the credit, but man, does Poe ever, he is a master of the M dash.
Yes, he totally is, and he uses it a ton in Fall of the House of Usher.
Oh, he does. I know. Like, even in
Yeah.
prose, like you see it in poetry. But man, he did write a really short. You can look it up on the Poe Baltimore, on the the Baltimore Society.
Yeah.
Poe Baltimore Society. He wrote a tiny little essay on the M dash, and
I
it's on.
thought so. Yeah. Yeah.
I've read it. It's interesting.
Yeah.
Not
Definitely.
even that, like, oh, he uses it, never talks about it anywhere else. Like, he's a critic, so I'm not surprised that he wrote on the use of the M dash, right?
Oh yeah.
So I'm gonna read two more, but I just had to comment on that. And it's like really hard when you're reading it, because like I told Thad when I was going through these, I'm like when he says like, and he's to sleep on her breast, deeply sleep from the heaven of her breast. I'm like, tell us how you really feel.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yes, and Holly said the fever of living is, she goes, what a line. So
Yeah.
I have to agree with her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the fever of living.
just the pauses in that poem, you got to get the rhythm. And then there's like one part in that. And I know I have two more to read, but I just had to remark on this poem because I also have it in Spanish out in the box for like, usually put it out in my poetry box for
Oh,
Halloween.
nice,
And
nice.
every time I see For Annie, I always think Por Annie, like because For Annie in Spanish, because I always have it out in the box and I like to read it in Spanish. But like it's just everywhere that he's breaking it up, and he's got like alliteration in here, and then he's got like just this. There's this whole entire section. I forget where it's at here, where he's just like, oh, Lanley reposes, forgetting or never regretting its roses, its old agitations of myrtles and roses. Like you could rap that.
You could.
Like, beautiful. Like I love that stanza because it's
that would be a great video you guys could do.
Oh yeah,
Rapping it, yes.
Whole rap.
Good. It's
rap.
like,
yes,
it's perfect. It's
yeah.
perfect. All right, I'm going to read Spirits of the Dead.
All right.
Cool.
Yes.
Like I said, if you're a fan of Spirits of the Dead, go on to the Baltimore Post Society and look up all the different iterations, because all the ones I'm using today are from the Poetry Foundation. So these would be like considered like the end edited work. But if you like, it's really interesting, specifically with Spirits of the Dead. I would tell people to go check it out because it's gone through some very different iterations with more stanzas too. So
that's cool. Yes. That's really cool.
He has this sectioned off with like 5 stanzas that are marked off. And then, but in the other versions, it's different. It's different format. So,
okay. All right.
It's a recommendation to people in the Poetry Foundation. That's where I get all my stuff. So
nice.
Awesome.
Nice.
Shout out. Yay. We use them too.
Yes, we do.
And the Poe Museum and everything.
And eapo.org. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, like I wouldn't be able to do my poetry, my sister project that I do myself. I wouldn't be able to do Red Brick without the Poetry Foundation because everything I print from there is what goes in the boxes. So it's the easiest way to give the poetry to the people is by
I agree. Yes.
All righty. We'll do the launch into the Spirits of the Dead here.
All right.
Let's go.
Spirits of the Dead by Edgar Allan Poe. Thy soul shall find itself alone mid dark thoughts of the gray tombstone, not one of all the crowd to pry into thine hour of secrecy. Be silent in that solitude, which is not loneliness, for then the spirits of the dead who stood in life before thee are again in death around thee, and their will shall overshadow thee. Be still. The night, though clear, shall frown, and the stars shall look not down from their high thrones in the heaven, with light like hope to mortals given, but their red orbs without beam to thy weariness shall seem as a burning and a fever which would cling to thee forever. Now are the thoughts thou shalt not banish, now are visions ne'er to vanish. From thy spirit shall they pass no more, like dewdrops from the grass. The breeze, the breath of God, is still, and the mist upon the hill, shadowy, yet unbroken, is a symbol and a token, how it hangs upon the trees, a mystery of mysteries. Another one where he uses the M dash. Okay, I'm going to finish with the Valley of Unrest, and maybe we have a couple minutes we can talk about these if you want. So here we go. The Valley of Unrest by Edgar Allan Poe, or in his day it would have been Edgar A. Poe. Once it smiled a silent dell where the people did not dwell. They had gone into the wars, trusting to the mild-eyed stars nightly from their azure towers to keep watch above the flowers, in the midst of which all day the red sunlight lazily lay. Now each visitor shall confess the sad valley's restlessness. Nothing there is motionless, nothing save the airs that brood over the magic solitude. Ah, by no wind are stirred those trees that palpitate like the chill seas around the misty Hebrides. Ah, by no wind those clouds are driven that rustle through the unquiet heaven, uneasily from morn to even over the violets there that lie in myriad types of the human eye, over the lilies there that wave and weep above a nameless grave. They wave from out their fragrant tops, external dews come down in drops. They weep from off their delicate stems, perennial tears descend in gems. Super cheerful. And a very good cheerful selection of poems today. That's for sure, right?
It's a Poe plethora. There we go.
Yes. Okay. We were just discussing the other day about puns, alliteration, that P words, I guess technically really truly with Poe, there's a lot you can do with P words that flow nicely for alliteration, and we just love it. And we kind of Jeannie was really going on and on the other day. I can't remember exactly what you said, but it was quite humorous. So
Yeah, I got on the Poe roll.
yeah.
Well, and I think it's funny because like he uses slant rhyme too. So
Yeah.
it's like, I love Emily Dickinson, but she gets like all the attention for the slant rhyme and the
Yeah.
index. And I'm like, Poe is a master of both of those things as well. Like when you
Mhm.
read Spirits of the Dead, when you read not one of all the crowd to pry into thine hour, you want to read it secrecy because you're like, oh,
Yes.
so he's rhyming. And then you're like, no, it's secrecy. But it's just the way that he wrote it, right? So
Oh, I
sometimes
know.
sometimes when you read his stuff, you're like, okay, I know what you're doing, and you were just looking for something that would fit,
Yes.
right? But I can't read it. It's not going to rhyme with pry, but it doesn't matter because format wise, it looks good. So
Cool.
yeah,
Well,
that's
thank you. We enjoyed your
Yes.
renditions and sharing those with us because Valley of the Unrest is one of my favorites. It's
Mhm.
not, it doesn't, in my opinion, doesn't get enough reading and
Yeah.
rhyming time. Sorry.
Yeah.
really,
But
it's a really amazing image of what happens like as a result of warfare,
yeah, and
right? It's like
That's true.
I wouldn't say it's like an anti-war poem
no,
specifically politically. However, it's such a touching way of like looking at what happens, like how people run off, they have stars in their eyes, they go to war, and what happens to the landscape, the physical landscape when there's
yeah,
war, what happens to towns, what happens to people. It's
Mhm.
all in there,
yeah,
like just I mean actually makes me think too of like, like whenever there's like what happens when a place is desolate and then things start to grow
Yeah.
and come back in. Like he's describing the rain and there's the seas, but no one's there anymore because they're gone. But life
Mhm.
goes on and it's still, it's just interesting.
Yeah.
yeah. And
I
I like
agree.
it. And this is going to sound really weird, but it's also with my generation with the destruction of Chernobyl. The
Yeah.
nuclear power plant. And whenever
Mhm.
time I read this, it just resonates even more to me
Yeah.
because now, they've got all these mutations, all these animals that have lived there, they've had to mutate because of the radioactivity that's going on. But at the same time, things have started to grow, but that doesn't
Mhm.
mean humanity can interact with them for a long period of time because it's still dangerous.
Yeah.
Right.
So with the Valley of Unrest, it just that to me speaks of Chernobyl because it is a valley of unrest. It is still
Yeah.
recovering, but it's still not in a perfect harmony. I guess is what I'm trying to say.
I was actually thinking the same thing.
Yeah,
I was like,
Same.
I just thought it would be like a comparison that would come out of nowhere. I don't know. I'm glad you
I
said that because I was like,
see.
this reminds me of like nuclear fallout. Like,
Yeah, I agree. And in this fourth 9 weeks, one of the stories that we read is Ray Bradbury's "There Will Come Soft Rains."
man, I was just thinking that. I was
Yes,
gonna say,
and we have
Ray
an
Bradbury.
informational text that's called "The Nuclear Tourist" that pairs well with it. But I may throw in the Valley of Unrest because that you kind of given a new
Yeah,
perspective on that.
yeah,
I think for
because
me,
and I think that's why it's so special for me is because it's got
yeah,
that historical aspect to it,
yeah, connection,
the
yeah,
history thing, and it can because history and literature, that's one of the two things with I would teach most of is because they go together so well.
yeah.
So
I
Oh,
agree.
definitely. Well, and then at the very end, it's like they wave from out their fragrant tops. The ending is phenomenal. I mean, you have to say he's
Yeah.
got an exclamation point on the end. External dews come down in drops. They weep from off their delicate stems, perennial tears descend in
yeah,
gems. It's like almost like nature is weeping for what was lost.
yeah.
It's beautiful, beautiful ending.
Yeah, I think it was one of the inspirations that I took for, I wrote a ballad. Well, it was written as a ballad. So, but I've turned it into a long poem that talks about the Civil War.
Mm.
And I
Yeah.
use a lot of that influence from Poe about the Valley of Unrest. And I used it and I didn't actually know it until after I got it finished. And I was rereading it going, wow, I can definitely see Poe's influence in this
Yeah, absolutely.
because it just turned out really well. So I was ecstatic about it. It was a sad poem, but I was ecstatic about it.
Yeah.
I always think to myself, what would it have been like if he would have been alive like if him and Dickinson had overlapped? I mean,
Yeah,
time wise, because a lot of her poetry was written by watching people getting buried across the street from her during the Civil War.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
I'm like, what if he had lived through the Civil War? What kind of poetry would we have had?
I
Oh,
have
yeah.
thought that too. It's like, wow, what would have happened? Yeah.
I mean, it was still brewing in his time. It's not like it brewed for a while. It's not like
Yeah.
it just came out of nowhere. Like it was brewing for quite some time. So
Yeah,
anyway.
actually, we were supposed to. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Season.
Oh, okay.
Actually, it was the second one that occurred because the first time we almost came to a civil war was when the late 1830s. You
Yeah.
know, and not many people realize that
Yeah.
we managed because the war hawks were pushing for it so bad in the
Was that the
South.
compromise?
Yes, that was the Great Compromise.
Yeah.
Right.
And so if we hadn't had that, then we'd have been in the Civil War a lot earlier than the 1860s.
Yeah. Which Poe would have seen.
Yeah, since
Yeah.
he would have been a part of it. So, but yeah, I've always wondered that myself.
He could have fought.
Yeah,
When you think about it, if
he
they'd
was
have had,
military, so
Yeah.
So
yeah,
and
we may have lost him earlier if
yeah,
that was the case.
He was an artillery guy, so that was a
Yeah.
special.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's no doubt he would have been.
he would have been one of the ones they'd be aiming for,
Yes.
especially with the cannons and
Yeah.
stuff. So
That's very surreal to think about.
it is, but he would be very verbose about if he had lived through it. So I
Yes.
can see that. He would
Yeah.
have gotten plenty and plenty and plenty of material to use.
I guess we got plenty out of Whitman though.
Yeah,
That's true.
Yeah, that's true. Whitman took his place. Whitman
Yes.
took his place on that.
Only with the
front.
free verse, which he would have hated. So
Yeah,
I
Yeah.
really would have hated free verse. I mean, I really do.
Yeah.
I think they would have clashed
Yeah.
more than just for the Civil War.
Yeah, but Whitman was inspired by Poe.
Yeah, but
So
Whitman was an odd duck when
yeah,
it
he
came to
was.
poetry
He
too.
was. Yeah.
I don't see them sharing poetry.
No.
Whitman, every time I think of Whitman, I have to think more natural,
Oh, yeah.
nature.
Like in a row camp.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So I think that's kind of where Poe gets me more on the supernatural, where Whitman's more on natural, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So.
Did we
And I
get
think-
any? Oh, go ahead, Season. I'm
I
sorry.
don't know if you got to go on. You got other people coming.
Well, I was going to just check and make sure. Did we get any more comments or questions for Season?
Well, one of the followers that we have or chat is Gothic Poetry by Candlelight, and they were imparting on us that they've actually been to Chernobyl.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it
Okay.
was an experience, and I can see
only
that.
imagine.
And then, of course, Spill the Tea Poetry gave you, and so did Holly. They loved your renditions and your M dash and all that wonderful stuff. So we
attention
thank
to
you.
the
Those
M
little poetry snaps.
Yes.
When I write poetry, I have an M dash now. Like it's my format comes from Marianne Moore, and then my M dashes are thrown in for good measure too. And if nobody, I mean, I could talk poetry with you guys all day long because
Yeah.
Like Marianne Moore, I came across when I was in college as an English major, and I was like, she's such a gem, and like no one knows about her.
I'm gonna have to check her out. I'm gonna write that down. Actually,
format. It's very interesting, like how she just like in terms of free verse, how you'll have like you'll have a verse, and then you'll have the next line will drop, and there'll be like a space, almost an indented space.
Okay.
She does it all the time.
Yes.
Interesting.
Okay. And it's like it's really an interesting formatting thing because it really makes you like you take a breath a lot more when you go to the next line, and the way that she uses it is like it's really cool.
Oh, that is.
Yeah, and Candlelight or Gothic Poetry by Candlelight is Wayne.
Okay.
He is another one that we're going to have later on that we've talked about, and we've actually had him as a guest. But yeah, I didn't want to say sorry, Wayne. I didn't want to implement you if it wasn't you, because I was like, I don't know. I know it's Irish poetry, and then Candlelight. So I was protecting you and me to make sure I didn't make a faux pas.
That's right.
So yes, thank you, Wayne, and.
Yes.
We appreciate you and look forward to hearing you later on today.
Absolutely.
So,
well, Season, what do you guys have coming up?
Well, so this is exciting, sort of.
Oh,
cool. Well, first of all, Thad has the script done for the Black Cat. It's done. Yay! Ready to go. Of course, now we're going to chase the money train. So that's the hardest part. We have a team here. We always can shoot. We always can do that. The budget. Hardest thing, but the script is ready to go and he is excited about it. We're facing a bunch of roadblocks with funding, with some of the grant applications, because we will not compromise on a lot of things.
Right.
Okay.
because of our uncompromising way and wanting to have control over our project, it makes it a little bit harder to get money because anyone who gives you money wants to exert control with
Right.
cast all the way down to casting, and we're not going to do that.
Oh,
So
wow.
in order to do it, like, I can tell you off camera exactly what that entails because it's a long conversation. But
Okay.
the grants, they all have different requirements now, and half the time we can't meet them, or we're not going to meet them. We refuse to.
Mhm.
We don't want to
Understand.
compromise that. So we're
Okay.
working on that, and then April 1st, we're releasing a video I did on My November Guest, which is one of my all-time favorite Robert Frost poems.
Okay.
So check that out. That'll be great for using to teach in the classroom because I
Yes.
cover form, I cover the Sound of Sense, which is like Robert Frost, his whole philosophy of poetry and where
Mhm.
that comes from. And I worked really hard on that script. So
Okay.
definitely check
Look
that video.
forward to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we did shoot it in October, so it will give you a major fall feel. But I think you guys will really enjoy it. I mean, I think
Absolutely.
Hey, if it's got Frost involved, I'm there.
Yes.
and
Yeah,
we
he's
have him
amazing.
reading, we have him reading the poem in the video, and then I break
Yes.
down the format, and he has him reading it, and then Thad has the A, B, he has everything labeled. So if you're
Nice.
students that ever read it, they can follow the formatting.
That is so cool.
Yay.
Okay.
Loving it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I go over the
Yay.
format and then I talk about the themes, and I'm gonna try going forward to do a lot more on poems and like literature, and have the same format where we tackle like the format for the students, and then we tackle like just what are the themes with a little biographical stuff thrown in, because I don't think you
Gotcha.
can understand anybody without that.
Perfect.
I totally agree. They have got to have background knowledge. Absolutely.
Yeah, because
That's the main
they're
thing.
not growing up with as much, involvement in
Yeah.
literature as we did. I'm going to
Mhm.
use we because I'm going to talk about us because
Yes.
we're old.
Yes.
Season is still baby.
And the exciting thing today is my crows are coming to my feeding platform.
Yay.
So
I saw the video
yeah.
where he landed. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm starting to get footage of Solo because his girl is like brooding. So it's the only time male crows have to feed a female is during brooding because she can't leave the nest. So
Okay.
he's coming back and forth all day to my platform to take her food because she's screaming at him. You can hear her.
That is so
Like,
cool.
so like check out if you like corvids, if that's what you like, definitely check out
Yeah.
it because I have a camera set up and it's right outside my window and I've been able to see him come
Woohoo.
like within 5 feet. I can see the whites of his eyes. It's really
That
cool.
is so neat. Okay.
I'll definitely be
Cool.
looking for the corvids.
Yes.
But thank you, Season.
Yes.
We
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. And
Thanks for having me.
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. We're so
Go
glad
for
you
it.
got to join us and
Yes.
you did amazing. So
Thank
thank
you.
you.
You guys have fun the rest of the day.
All right. Have a
We
great
will try.
weekend.
Bye.
Yeah,
See you
Thank
later.
you.